Utility regulation to order. Hobie, can you call our roll?
Senator Saslaw, Senator Lucas, Senator Servo,
Here.
Senator Obenshain, Delegate Kilgore, Delegate O'Quinn, Delegate Sullivan, Delegate Scott, got your Delegate O'Quinn. Delegate O'Quinn's online. Delegate Runyon, Delegate Webbert, Cassidy Rasnick,
Here.
Howard Schafferman,
Here.
and Meade Browder.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Hobie. Just note for the record, Senator Saslaw just walked in and sat in Senator Lucas's seat. We got a couple new. We have one new member here, and we have a full house today. So I'd like everybody to introduce themselves really quick. We can start down there with Delegate Weber.
Delegate Michael Weber, representing.
But you got to hit the green button on your mic in front of you there.
Sorry. Delegate Michael Weber, representing the 61st District.
Delegate Chris Runyon, representing the 25th District, currently 35th District come January.
Senator Mark Obenshain from the Shenandoah Valley, Senate District 2.
Rip Sullivan, House District 6.
Scott Sturvell, I represent the 36th Senate District for the time being, soon to be the 34th Senate seat.
Dick Saslaw, 35th District. It's mostly Fairfax County, but for only about 34 more days.
Cassidy Rasnick, I represent the Economic Development Community.
Meade Browder for the Attorney General's Office.
Howard Schaeferman, new member representing Ratepayer Advocacy.
Great, and thank you. It's good to have Mr. Schaeferman here as our newest member appointed by the governor. So welcome to the commission.
Thank you.
We got a pretty full agenda today. I want to make sure we can get through all of it, especially if anybody has questions, which I'm sure there will be. And then we have public comment at the end. We have a brief conversation about executive director, and so I'd like to get going here. So what do we have up first? Implementation of the Virginia Electric Utility Regulation Act from the State Corporation Commission. And for members of the commission, you all note this is part of our statutory mission, is to monitor implementation of this act. And so this is sort of a regular thing we'll be doing. So welcome. Is her mic on? All right, yeah, maybe it's not mic'd. The speakers aren't high enough, maybe. Okay.
I'm going to sound like Verizon. Can you hear me now? Is that better? A little better? Okay, I'll try and speak up then. Well, good morning. All right, so each year the Commission does submit a report to the CEUR by November 1st. And as it's been pointed out, this is pursuant to the Virginia Code, Sections 56.576 and also 596.4, which is commonly referred to as the Regulation Act. On this slide, which hopefully y'all will have access to later on, there's a link to the report online. So it's a pretty comprehensive report. Okay, and one of the first things that we talk about in the report are some of the legislative changes in 2023 to the Regulation Act. One of the main ones was a return to biennial reviews from triennial reviews. This required Dominion to file a biennial review after July 1st, 2023. It also set a return on equity of 9.7% for Dominion. And then APCO will file its first biennial review March 31st of 2024. So that will be coming up shortly. It also provided both Dominion and APCO the opportunity to securitize deferred fuel balances. It also included a roll-in or a combination of some of the rate adjustment clauses, about $350 million for Dominion, into their base rates, so they're no longer being charged. And then also the Commission has been directed to initiate a proceeding to determine protocols and standards for performance-based adjustments to the return on equity, or ROE. So those are some of the major ones. There were more, but that's just kind of a quick summary of what we saw. Now, we've had quite a few. The report talks about a lot of the applications that were filed with the Commission, and there have been many of them made that relate to the Virginia Clean Economy Act, grid transformation, and energy efficiency plans. And just for example, we've had multiple applications for renewable generation That's been through a variety of different of the rate adjustment clauses. It could be either through RPS or a separate rack. And you can see that we've had quite a bit of solar and storage for both Dominion and APCO that have been before the Commission and approved, as well as demand-side management programs, energy efficiency programs, and grid transformation plan. And those encompass a lot of the costs that are within all through the VCA, et cetera. We've had additional applications dealing more with the rate side, in addition to just VCA and getting clean new power. We've had APCO's triennial review, which has concluded. We've had Dominion's biennial review, which is still pending. We have a variety, quite a few, of rate adjustment clauses that are filed each year. We're probably at about maybe 25 or 30 rate adjustment clauses that get filed each year. And then we have also had the RPS cases, which APCO's has concluded and Dominion's is pending. Some of the other information that we include in the report includes information on the customer bills. So here's a slide that we have in the report dealing with Dominion's residential bills. And the nice part is it kind of starts back from 2007, which I know seems like a while ago, but that's when the regulation, when we started going back to the Regulation Act. And you can see where the bill was for customers. And again, this is using 1,000 kWh, which is our typical customer bill. It's not average, but it's typical. Back in 2007, it was $90.59. And you can see the changes at different points in time that we've reflected. 2015 was when we had the base rate freeze. 2018 is when we had the grid transformation. So it's showing different points. And today, as of July 1st, it was $125.12. And you can see the components between the base rates, fuel, and rate adjustment clauses. And those are our three components. On the Dominion bill, kind of breaking it down again, base rates, you can see the increase between July 2007 and July 2023. Very small change to the base rates. That's remained mostly unchanged. Changes in the fuel, a little over $6. Most of the increases have been through the rate adjustment clauses. Again, those are single issue cases. It could be recovering generation plant, et cetera. And you can see the total increase of $34.53. Again, just looking at residential customers. Here's a breakdown of the bill as of July 1, 2023. It just shows it in a different format. We just showed it in a graph form, but you can see the base rates on the first line, the fuel factor, and then it starts all the rate adjustment clauses. And so, and actually, the fuel factor was the original rate adjustment clause, but now we have costs for a variety of items. So you can see as of July 1, the bill was $125.12, and the proposed bill, and you can see the effective dates in the far right-hand column of some of the increases or decreases in some cases, would be about $135. So that shows all the different ones for Dominion. Turning to APCO, looking at similar information, again starting in 2007, the total customer bill was about $66.61. You can see the changes throughout the period of time to currently $157.62 as of July 1, 2023. Again, showing those components between base rates, fuel, and racks. On the next slide, again, it breaks it down, showing just the increases in the base rates. Again, not as much, but there's been a little bit of change in the base rates for APCO, fuel, and rate adjustment clauses for a total increase of $91.01. Similarly, we have APCO's customer bill for a residential customer, again, using 1,000 kWh. You can see there's base rates, then there's a fuel factor, and all the different racks. So, again, we have a few of those, and you can see some of them even labeled as like VCEA racks. I went right through David's slide. Excuse me. I got excited. I apologize about that, but I'm going to turn it over to David Essa now. I apologize about that. Here, you can have that.
Once again, David Essa with the State Corporation Commission. Good morning, Mr. Chair. So on this slide, I'm just briefly going to give an overview of the different stakeholder meetings that the Commission staff has been involved in. The first one, as you can see, is the energy efficiency stakeholder sessions that's been ongoing since around about 2018, and it involves Dominion, APCO, and also Kentucky Utilities, KU, Old Dominion. So this is an ongoing session where the stakeholders generally get together to discuss programs that the utilities would be filing for with the Commission. Okay, so that's an ongoing thing that essentially goes on throughout each year. The next one, the electric utility infrastructure investment, you might recall, this was a tasking that was given to the SCC to develop a program to encourage and expedite infrastructure investments by Dominion and APCO. We loosely refer to it as a site development program. So we did that activity, and then we submitted a report to the General Assembly back in 2022. And once again, that was in response to House Bill 890 from the 2022 General Assembly session. The next stakeholder meeting you see is the Renewable Energy Facilities Life Cycle Study. This was a study that the SCC was required to conduct, and we did that with stakeholders and experts in that area and presented a report also to the General Assembly earlier on. And then the last one you see is for the shared solar program, and this was a stakeholder session that was required for APCO and Kentucky Utilities to pretty much look for ideas on how to implement a shared solar program. So that activity was also completed for APCO and Kentucky Utilities, and the report was presented to the General Assembly. So that's essentially a snapshot, and you'll find descriptions of these in the actual report. And at this point, Kim and I will be open to any questions you may have.
Does the commission have any questions? I have a quick question. If we want to find those reports, where do we find them?
Oh, the very first slide, let's see. It's on the very first slide of this presentation. There's a link to it for the CEUR report itself. But if you're looking for links to the different reports in this, I can send that to Mr. Stevens after the session, so that is going to be readily available to you. But if you're referring to today's CEUR report, that's on the very first slide of this presentation.
I was talking about the reports you just mentioned on that last slide there. If we want to find those, where can we find them? Because they don't get emailed to us directly.
Yeah, we will email that to Mr. Stevens. We will email them to you after this session.
Okay, are they online somewhere?
Oh, yeah. They get posted online. But for convenience, we can resend it to you all.
Okay. Yeah, I think that everybody in the commission would appreciate that.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions? Nope. Okay, thank you, David. I have a question about the prior couple slides.
Okay.
What's the difference between a typical bill and an average bill? You said they're different.
Yes. Typical bill, we use 1,000 kWh, and that's just for consistency purposes. Both APCO and Dominion have average usage for residential customers. They vary slightly, so that you can have kind of a starting point that you can look at over a period of time. It's just easier to use 1,000 kWh. That average will move over time. So if you look at the average this year versus the average in 5 years, it might not be an apples-to-apples comparison. So that's why we've kind of used just that 1,000 kWh as typical.
Okay, great. Thank you. Delegate Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So off the top of your head, Ms. Pate, do you know whether Dominion's or APCO's bill, average bill, is above 1,000 or below 1,000 for the last year? Or whatever?
Yeah, it's slightly above 1,000. I believe it's between 1,100 and 1,200. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it's slightly above.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any other questions? Nope. Okay. Good. Well, we appreciate your presentation. Hopefully we'll get you guys 2 more commissioners soon.
We would love that. Thank you.
And next up, we have Tom Hucker with the U.S. Department of Energy. And Tom comes to us from theoretically from D.C., although you all might know Tom because he was a member of the Maryland House of Delegates for a while, and then the Montgomery County Council.
Guilty as charged.
Right. And we won't hold the Maryland House of Delegates against you. So welcome, Tom. What's going on at the federal level?
Exactly. Good morning, Chair Surville and all commission members and staff. My name is Tom Hucker, and for the record, I'm a senior consultant with the Loan Programs Office in the U.S. Department of Energy. I work on our outreach and business development team, helping states and local governments and private companies access the historic amount of funding that the Biden administration and Congress made available through the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm also our office's lead for Virginia and most of the South and the Midwest. And the time I spent in Annapolis certainly helps me to understand the challenges before you. The Loan Program Office is full of subject matter experts from all over the nation, and I was able to bring an all-star panel to join us today, three of my colleagues. We had hoped we were going to have a Teams presentation, but we have them on audio, right? So before their comments, do we know if they've called in? Yes. They should be able to hear you. They can hear me, okay.
Tom, Ed Davis is on the line.
Great, thank you, Ed. Why don't I ask each of my colleagues remotely to introduce themselves very quickly before we get to their remarks. Ed?
Yes, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with the commission. My background is in the advanced nuclear space as well as hydrogen. I've been with the DOE Loan Programs Office for about 15 years. I joined back in 2008 when the department put out a solicitation for nuclear and got an overwhelming response, 19 applications for 14 nuclear plants for a total of $200 billion in construction costs. So that's when I joined, and we can talk about the opportunity that we're starting to see now in the very near future. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, and Ed's a graduate of a couple fine Virginia academic institutions as well. Leslie Rich is here from New York.
Hi, this is Leslie Rich, and I am in the outreach and business development area of the Loan Programs Office. I joined about a year ago after 30 years on Wall Street as an equity research analyst covering the utility sector, and I'm specifically working with all the utilities in the country on accessing the loan program.
And we'll also hear from Emily Felt, who's our lead for offshore wind programs. Emily?
Good morning. Thanks for having us this morning. My name is Emily Felt. I joined Loan Programs Office about a year ago as well, after a decade and a half at a very large utility in the Southeast. My background is renewable storage and utilities and how they are entering that space and adopting it into their fleets. At the Loan Programs Office, I lead our engagement with offshore wind, the industry itself, and look forward to speaking with you about that today. Thank you.
Terrific. And then after that,
Just on 1 second. I just want to also note for everybody in the audience and up here on the dais that all the materials for the PowerPoints were just uploaded to DLS online. If you want to be able to follow on your digital devices or at home, pull it up on your laptop. It's all up on the DLS website under our commission. So
Thank
go
you.
ahead. Yep.
So then after we hear from my three colleagues, I'll bat cleanup and fill you in more on the program that Congress designed to fund capital projects that receive state funding. So first, let me turn it over to Leslie, who again leads our programs that are aimed at utilities and energy companies, to explain what the LPO does, what our value proposition is, and what projects we have in her work with utilities and energy companies. Leslie?
Great, thank you. So moving to slide 2, the mission of the Loan Programs Office is to work with private sector companies to finance the deployment of and scale up of innovative clean energy technologies to build energy infrastructure, domestic supply chains, and help create jobs and reduce emissions in communities across the United States. Is someone able to advance the slide?
Yep.
Okay. Moving to slide 3, we describe ourselves as the bridge to bankability. As you think about technologies that can maybe access the equity markets, but can't yet access commercial debt markets. So we are there to help those technologies get across the bridge to bankability on the next slide, slide 3, so they can get to commercial scale up and eventually access the commercial debt markets to full market acceptance. Moving on to slide 4, what the LPO offers to borrowers, access to patient capital. So oftentimes technologies and companies can't get commercial debt, or they can, but at unattractive interest rates. So we can be there and be more patient than potentially commercial debt markets can be. We can be flexible with our financing, and there's a committed partnership with the Department of Energy in terms of the expertise from our national labs and all of our engineers and financing and structuring experts within the Loan Programs Office. Going to the next slide, you can see the progress to date. So right now, this is as of October, we have 181 applications that are in under review for requesting $162 billion of loans. The size of the boxes on the right of the next slide show the dollar amount requested per technology. So you can see there are large dollar amounts requested for renewables, virtual power plants, biofuels, transmission, advanced nuclear, advanced vehicles, storage. You can see it's across a wide range of technologies. I want to pivot to specifically the utility sector. For the utilities and the independent power producers, we have $40 billion of applications that are currently in and under review, and there's another $60 billion of utility applications that are in our pipeline in pre-application discussions for eligibility consideration. So a very, very robust interest from the utilities across the country, among many other types of applicants. On the next slide, you'll see the geographic dispersion of the applications that are currently under review, and you can see it's across the entire country, your part of the country as well. Moving on to slide 7. The programs that we're going to be talking about today are what we call Title 17 Clean Energy Project categories. I work on the Energy Infrastructure Reinvestment Program, 1706. But some of my colleagues today are going to be talking about the Innovative Energy, Innovative Supply Chain, and the State Energy Financing Institution programs. So moving to slide 8, Title 17 program eligibility. All projects must be located in the U.S. and be energy related. They need to achieve credible greenhouse gas reductions or pollution reductions, have a reasonable prospect of repayment. These are loans, not grants. So there are lots of agencies, lots of departments within the Department of Energy that are awarding grant funding. Ours are loans. They need to be paid back. And all applications must include a community benefits plan. Going to the next slide, slide 9, the Title 17 lending overview. So there's no minimum or maximum loan size. We can lend up to 80% of eligible project costs. And I think the important thing on this slide, and for me to convey to you today, is that the whole reason for companies engaging with us is for the low-cost financing. So how low? What are the terms? The 1706 projects that utilities are bringing in can be financed at a rate of U.S. Treasuries plus 3/8 of a point. So based on where the 30-year Treasury is today, that's about 4.6%. That is materially lower than the utilities can finance going to the commercial debt markets. It's as much as 1 to 1.6% cheaper for the utilities to go through our office and our program than it is for them to go to the commercial debt markets. And given that the utilities in Virginia plan to spend tens of billions of dollars from now through 2031, which is when our program can extend out to, that can amount to hundreds of millions of dollars of savings that are passed directly through to customers and ratepayers in Virginia. And that serves to lower the customer bill impact associated with the energy transition and the Clean Energy Economy Act. Going to the next slide, just talking specifically about the Energy Infrastructure Reinvestment Program, slide 10. This is for projects that are basically replacing energy infrastructure that is retiring with less emissions intensity, or taking operating energy infrastructure and making it less emissions intensive. On slide 11, you can see the project eligibility criteria around what the definition is for energy infrastructure. Importantly, there does not need to be innovation. So this means that existing technologies can be eligible for this program, such as solar, storage, wind, can be eligible for this low-cost financing. Moving to slide 12, you can see some examples where power plant infrastructure is either repurposed or replaced with renewable energy storage, distributed energy like virtual power plants, so that could be your energy efficiency and demand side programs, transmission, nuclear generation, reconductoring transmission lines, and many other examples. And I'm going to dive now into 3 examples of applications that we've received, and so you can see more specifically what the applications might look like. So on slide 13 is a sample deal, and we have many of these, where a utility files an integrated resource plan with their state commission, and they say, over the next 10 years, we plan to retire this infrastructure and replace it with that infrastructure. So here's a sample application where we get an integrated resource plan that says we're going to retire 2,400 megawatts of, we're going to retire 1,400 megawatts of coal, and we're going to replace it with 2,400 megawatts of new renewables and storage. In the near term, we're going to put in 500 megawatts of solar, 200 megawatts of storage by 2026, for example. And then in 2027 to 2031, we plan to add another gigawatt of solar, 200 megawatts of storage, 500 megawatts of wind. And we plan to refurbish 100 megawatts of our existing hydro generation. So it's a big portfolio application that's really mirroring what the utility has agreed to with their state utility commission in their integrated resource plan. So we're not accelerating retirements. We are just helping to fund the planned energy transition that the company has agreed to with its state at a much lower cost to customers. On the next slide, slide 14, you'll see transmission upgrades. Transmission reconductoring is a massive opportunity in this country where we can increase the capacity on existing rights-of-way by up to 50% or more by putting in taller towers and more advanced technology. And so those projects are eligible. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to Emily Felt to discuss on slide 15 what's happening in the offshore wind industry and how those applications are being considered.
Thanks, Lindsay. So on offshore wind, we wanted to bring this to your attention, obviously, because of Virginia's commitment to offshore wind. What's interesting is that in the offshore wind sector, we are able to provide financing to eligible offshore wind deployments. So that's to a developer or a utility who is developing turbines in the water, so to speak, off their coast to finance that multi-billion-dollar investment. We can do that through various different programs. But the most important point I wanted to make is that we can do not just the financing of the deployment, but we are able to finance the related manufacturing economic development as well. And let me explain that. So we are, as Leslie said, we have the Energy Infrastructure Reinvestment Program, but we also have 2 other programs that are very similar, that are very well funded, called the Innovative Energy Program and the Innovative Supply Chain Program. So offshore wind facilities themselves could be financed through the first, the Innovative Energy program if they are part of a larger plan, as Leslie explained, to replace fossil with a portfolio of cleaner resources. We are also able to finance the folks who are expanding operations or establishing operations to manufacture cables, nacelles, towers, monopiles, turbines, all of those very, very large pieces of infrastructure that will be manufactured at coastal ports in the near future in order to basically establish the industry and the supply chain in the United States. So that's the main point that I wanted to make. The actions we're taking is that we are reaching out to just about everyone across the offshore wind vertical. And that also includes the boat operators and boat builders. We think that we are able to provide financing for eligible vessel construction as well. So I'll hand it back to you, Leslie.
Actually, on the next slide, we're going to turn it to Ed Davis to talk about the opportunities for Virginia in terms of the nuclear industry.
Thanks, Leslie. You know, Virginia's always had a very strong nuclear power program. Virginia has 4 operating nuclear plants. Today, you know, the LPO program, as Leslie has described, under 1703, Clean Technology Financing, is able to fund and provide debt financing for SMR, small modular reactor deployments, as well as their related manufacturing and component supply chains. We can also finance plant license renewals. I think Dominion is planning to renew all 4 licenses from 60 to 80. It's a very exciting time now to be in the looking at the nuclear sector. Just over the week, the UN Conference of Parties that's being held at the UAE and has just announced 22 nations have signed an accord to triple the amount of installed nuclear capacity by 2050 in order to decarbonize, led by both France and the United States, along with the United Kingdom. Here in the U.S., I think we're very close to a tipping point. I'm not going to go through these slides, but we do have available on the DOE website what we call our liftoff reports, which indicate that the country is very close to a breakthrough in terms of moving forward with a new generation of reactors, small modular reactors, which provide enhanced safety as well as improved economics. We're poised to do that, and we would be very interested in assisting in the financing of any deployments within the state of Virginia. I know there's a lot of interest in the western coal fields of Virginia, as well as converting coal plants as well in the state. So there's lots of opportunities, and we're able to provide low-interest loans to those types of projects. So I'll stop there.
Okay, thanks, Ed. And finally, I want to talk to you all about the program that we have that finances capital projects that are supported by the state financially. I spend most of my time dealing with states and local governments and helping them and their private companies in those states access this historic amount of funding under the IRA. Under the IRA, Congress wanted to fund state energy programs, and they set aside nearly $100 billion to do just that. But there are thousands of possible projects out there, right? So how was Congress going to decide which projects should be eligible for taxpayer-subsidized below-market loans and which ones shouldn't? And the test they came up with is, does the state have some skin in the game? If the state is investing in this project, and it can be a grant, it can be a loan, it can be a loan loss reserve, that unlocks financing from the Loan Program Office, as long as the state has a financial stake. And again, as Leslie mentioned earlier, the state's contribution to projects like this can be very low. That's the good news. Single digits as low as 3 to 5% of a project cost. And we can finance, by law, up to 80% of a project cost. So we bring a lot of capital to the table as long as you can bring the developers or the tax credits they're claiming can close the gap and provide the rest of the equity that's required. What types of projects are we talking about? There's a wide array that qualify. First of all, building decarbonization, right? Buildings are a huge source of your carbon footprint and your energy costs in every state in the country. We're talking about whether it's government buildings or state universities and colleges or public schools. Our financing can finance not just LED lights and windows and doors and things that are probably already in your capital budgets, but also things to further lower or eliminate your energy costs, like adding solar, adding storage, adding EV charging infrastructure as well. All those types of investments can be financed through our office, through this state-supported program. Our below-market financing obviously can be an important tool to help you deploy your projects sooner and at lower costs. And in addition to building decarbonization, the financing is available for transportation electrification as well, whether you're talking about school or state or regional bus fleets, school buses, county commuter bus fleets like Fairfax Connector or Alexandria Dash. All those conversions both the rolling stock and the infrastructure can be financed through what's called the CEFI program. Congress, of course, loves acronyms. So what's a CEFI? They wanted to empower state authorities and agencies that already provide financing to your projects. In many states, those are green banks or a housing authority or an economic development corporation. Here in Virginia, the Energy Office has asked us to consider, as a start, Virginia Housing, Virginia Resources Authority, and Virginia Energy, and possibly other entities to qualify as CEFIs. We believe there will be multiple entities that are already qualified as CEFIs in the Virginia government. We're not worried about that. Again, the state's contribution to these projects can be as low as 5%, and then we can finance up to 80% of the project costs. So if, for example, you wanted to add $100 million worth of solar to schools in, say, Fairfax County, if the Assembly put in $1 million a year for 5 years to get to $5 million, and you came up with the rest of the equity to get to 20% through the tax credits that the developer will be able to claim, we can finance up to $80 million of that $100 million project. And for projects like that are generating energy, they're likely to obviously pay themselves in a very short amount of time. So what's the next step? The first step is really to identify the funding you already use in your budget process, whether it's grants or loans or loan loss reserves to fund building improvements or transportation improvements. The next step is just to map out your priority projects in the capital budgets and write up RFPs to offer that work to the private sector to get that work done. In states across the country, you saw that whole pipeline. Companies are bidding on that work right now to do all those types of projects that I ran through. Or, aside from just a project-by-project approach, you could take a whole sector approach. Here's what they're doing in New York. NYSERDA, which is the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, they were so excited about this program, they set aside $20 million as a start in a fund to address, as a start, low and moderate income housing, a vexing perennial problem where they want to lower energy costs and improve the quality of life for their residents. They created that $20 million fund. They challenged the private sector to send in proposals to address low and moderate income housing, lower the energy costs, and they announced they will reward the best proposals with grants of $1 million to $5 million as long as they unlock Loan Program Office financing. So that way, the New York State taxpayers are guaranteed for every dollar that they're putting in, they're going to unlock 10 to 20 times that from our office in low-cost financing. There's no reason that I see that Virginia couldn't create a program like that to tackle an entire sector. So I'll wrap up, but I hope you share our excitement about this historic opportunity. We would love to move $2 to $5 billion in financing to Virginia projects, and we're eager to talk to you and your city and county officials and your contractors about individual projects and how to meet your goals. Last thing, you shouldn't think about this for too long because our authority is time limited. This funding goes back to the Treasury, whatever's not under a conditional commitment, by 2026, and it can take a year to go through our process. So we really feel like we're working with 4 to 5 financial quarters to get this money committed to projects. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Tom. I think Delegate Sullivan has a question.
Mr. Hucker, you said, one of your very first slides, I've got it up here. There are 181 active applications. Are you in a position to tell us whether any of those come from Virginia?
We can't talk about the specifics of individual applications that are under consideration.
That's why I asked, are you in a position?
Right.
So the answer is no. You
Thank
can't.
you.
Okay.
I can't. Right. If there are individual ones you want to follow up on, you should probably talk to them about their experience, and if things are stuck, we can try and
trying to
unstick
break
them.
in.
Exactly. Thank you. I appreciate that.
That was the question I had actually written down. I have a couple questions, Tom. So I thought online that I think it was Minnesota set aside like $40 million in something they called a green bank or something. Is that the same kind of thing you were talking about New York's doing, except statewide?
I knew the Virginia Assembly, Minnesota Assembly set that aside. I'm not that familiar with the requirements for that fund, but it has the same goals, I think, and very similar to the Clean Energy Fund that New York set aside.
Okay. And can you describe like what other states are doing in terms of accessing your funds? Like just to have a sense of what other states are doing to try to access
Sure.
this besides just New York? I mean, just in general.
And I'm actually, we have a new, very experienced colleague that worked to pass that Minnesota fund, so I'm happy to get you more information on that, Mr. Chairman. Sure. In other mid-Atlantic states that I'm assigned to, I have a weekly call with some of them where we're talking about CEFI programs like putting solar on schools in some counties, where we're talking about reclaimed mine lands, where there's an awful lot of coal mines, natural gas facilities that the state is interested in closing off, and the new owners are interested in covering with solar panels and storage to turn them into a green energy asset and take advantage of the industrial zoning there, and often the interconnect that's there as well. In other places, there's many 1706 projects, and Leslie may want to chime in here. I'm working with cement plants that want to move away, for example, from being coal-fired, former coal-fired utilities that want to add solar and storage to the property, and then use the facility to become a green manufacturing hub, whether they want to make EV batteries or solar panels or something else. There are many entrepreneurs and investors around the country that are looking for sites just like that, where they could take advantage of both the zoning and the interconnect.
What kind of involvement have you had with our state?
It's early stage, I think. I think there's interest there. We would love to have more detailed conversations with all of you and the administration about individual projects, and have projects that we could bring experts to the table and help them help you get RFPs out there and get companies, the same companies that are bidding on projects in Pennsylvania and Ohio and New Jersey and New York and elsewhere, I know would love to do that kind of work in Virginia, and many of them are Virginia companies.
Does anybody else have any questions before we switch over to Virginia? Cassidy Rasnick.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Tom, how does this process normally go? Does a utility come to you normally? I know you've got several different products here, but what does it look like, and how can we encourage folks in Virginia to
Sure. I think if the last slide, it's not important, but it basically says just reach out to us. Unlike a grant where you fill out the application and it's sort of arm's length and you can't interact with the provider, we have a very collaborative, iterative process. We try to work with our applicants to help them fill out their applications, answer all their questions, and make sure that they succeed and their projects are delivered on time and on budget. Leslie ran through the value proposition that we offer patient capital, that we can offer loans over 20 or 30 years at below market rates. The non-financial benefit is also that we're the Department of Energy. We have 10,000 engineers in the building, right? And they've seen every use case under the sun. So for something like solar panels on schools, it's pretty straightforward and established. For a lot more innovative technology, we have a lot of experts that can work with you collaboratively and your applicants to make sure to de-risk a project and make sure that you know about the best practices all over the country to say, well, don't do that approach. It failed in Long Beach. This other approach worked in Seattle. These contractors didn't do so well in Idaho, and you may want to take this approach. It's very interactive and iterative and collaborative, and we are, very focused on just making sure projects are delivered on time and on budget so you can meet your goals. And they all start with just a pre-application consultation with us, which is confidential, and usually many meetings before you fill out a Part 1 application. Hope that's helpful.
Yes, I just want to make sure I was hearing it right, that in interacting with utilities who have state-approved programs that are going to move ahead, that there's a prospect that the interest rate savings then can be a benefit to the residential or commercial consumer because there's less interest being passed through. Is that
absolutely? And
right?
I'd urge Leslie, if she's still on the line, to chime in as well. But yeah, I think it's in your ratepayers' interest certainly to use as much of our low-cost financing as well to build things like distributed energy resources, particularly VPPs, virtual power plants, to increase reliability and do everything possible to make sure that the cost of the clean energy transition isn't entirely borne by your ratepayers.
Yeah, and Tom, this is Leslie. I'll just jump in. In terms of the activity underway in Virginia, eligible capital spending includes coal plant remediation, the replacement solar, storage, transmission, distributed energy resources, the replacement offshore wind, small modular nuclear reactor that could be used as part of a replacement resource. So there's a tremendous amount of capital that is being already planned in Virginia that is eligible for this very low-cost financing. The finance savings through 2031 amount to hundreds of millions of dollars for ratepayers.
Everybody heard that?
Yeah.
Audio's not so good. Okay. Billions of dollars worth of eligible projects, hundreds of millions in savings.
My question, Mr. Hucker, is does Director Davis have your cell phone number?
I hope he will after this. I brought cards with me, and it's on the slides.
I hope so, too.
Sure.
Do we got any other questions? Okay, I think that's probably a good transition to our next topic on the agenda, which is a presentation from the Virginia Department of Energy about how they're accessing these federal opportunities and others. So
thank you all so much.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate your team being available. So we have our new director of the Virginia Department of Energy, some of you might recognize. And welcome to the commission, Director Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to join you today. Just to answer our last question, we've been talking to the LPO office. We will get Tom's cell phone. We've been chatting with Julie and had some really good conversations with them. But I took, I guess, the director position over at the Department of Energy about 7 months ago. One of the things I was luckiest about was the passionate team I inherited. Some of them I have here today with me. Carrie Hearn is our Director of Affordability and Competitiveness. Larry Corky is our Manager of Policy and Planning, and Ryan Welch behind me is our Energy Analyst. So later on, if you have any questions, I'm sure one of us, probably them, can answer it for you. I appreciate the opportunity to be asked and provide a presentation on leveraging the efforts of federal loans and grants for Virginia energy programs. The governor, when he rolled out his all of the above, all-American energy plan, was very, very direct with it will be an all-American, all of the above, that we will compete to win. And compete to win also includes going after money for our infrastructure and energy generations, and we go after more than our fair share, and I think you'll find that we've been very successful in doing such. There has been some challenges along the way. Obviously, as you can imagine, managing millions of dollars is not an easy task. If you look at it historically, Virginia Energy in the past, our largest grant, absent post-mine land, has been about $10 million. Over the last 5 years, we've managed $75 million in grant monies. Over the next 5 years, we will manage over $1 billion in federal grant monies. So there's a lot of challenges, but a lot of excitement going on over at the Department of Energy. Our grants team is made up of about 6 individuals. They go after the majority of our grants and obviously very involved during the application process, especially when the federal government quite often recalculates the allocations we apply for and makes us go and have to rebudget for some things. We also work on a number of partners. Some of our grants have dozens of partners. One of our most recent grants had 80 letters of recommendation that we'd received to send up to the DOE in support of the grant. So a lot of community efforts go along with getting these grants. To do so, we actually had to build a from-scratch grant tracking and management system, which we rolled out a couple weeks ago to help us manage all the funds. And every night it goes out to grants.gov and brings down all the grants that we are eligible to go after as a Commonwealth. and also ones that other stakeholders in the Commonwealth could go after, whether they be nonprofit or local governments, and then we look at teaming with them. Kind of the big picture. So we've been a recipient of federal grants since our creation in 1985. We have significant challenges with every grant, but as you can see, as mentioned, we're over $1 billion in grants. The majority of them are formula grants, and some of the grants, a good chunk of that $1 billion you see, are grants for post-mine land. And that's really interesting because there's a lot of interest in post-mine land for renewable energy projects, including solar, like the Wise County Mineral Gap Solar Project, which was a 20-acre project, 3.46 megawatt solar array, which received $500,000 in AMLR funds to help make it a reality. As I mentioned, we're over $1 billion. That's kind of a little bit of an overview. One of the grants I do want to highlight, though, is the TREC grant you see up there. It's the Training Residential Energy Contractors Grant, which helps us provide the workforce necessary for this. But not only does it help us provide the workforce for residential installers and energy projects, but a lot of this workforce, the engineers, the welders, et cetera, are in high demand by some of our other stakeholders and industries as well, including shipbuilding. And of course, there's a number of transmission grants we're going after today, including transmission grants for additional transmission infrastructure and grants related to SMRs. Some of our formula-based grants are rather significant. The first is the Home Efficiency Rebate Program, and that one's just over $93 million. The funding will come to our state energy office, and then we'll be issuing rebates to building owners that install energy-saving retrofits to get greater energy savings. Also, low-income households will qualify for larger rebates, up to $8,000. And then you have the Home Electrification and Appliance Rebate. That program is probably the most well-known of the programs. We already have individuals calling our office asking about it, but both those grants, the applications will be due in January of 25. Although we do have some dollars in advance to help work with administrative fees as we go forward with it. Under the HERA program, residents can get rebates for energy-efficient appliances, including heat pumps and upgrade electrical wiring. The maximum amount for the upgrades is $14,000, but low-income residents can actually receive 100% of the expenditure of these upgrades. We'll receive the first receive funding for our grid resilience program for the first couple of years in early 2024, and hope to receive the rest of the funding for that program annually for the next 3 years. And this funding is important to the Commonwealth as it helps us prepare for events that can disrupt our grid, including weather actions. And then lastly, our application for the Energy Efficiency Revolving Loan Fund Capitalization Grant is under review and will help us create loans and grants for energy efficient programs, which include audits, upgrades, and retrofits. Our competitive grants are rather sizable as well. The first big one is the Mid-Atlantic Electrification Partnership Grant, which is a little bit over $5 million. It's going to focus on rural communities with a goal of building electric vehicle transportation ecosystems that also can support other grant dollars being received. The biggest one that we have gotten to date, or going after to date, and we expect to get, is the Solar for All grant. It's a $250 million grant application that's under review, and the funding would go to programs to increase solar installations in low-income or disadvantaged communities through rooftop solar and shared solar installations. These dollars can be used for both single-family and multifamily residences. Additionally, we have the Clean Energy on Mine Lands program out there, and that application works with partners to design a commercial solar deployment. Right now, it would include 6 projects that would add 300 megawatts to the grid, and most of this post-mine land is post-mine land for coal, and mostly within Wise County. To highlight the impact of these grants, we looked at one of them. This is a Solar for All. And of all the grants, obviously, carry economic impact. But when you look at the Solar for All grant, it's expected to create 2,000 new jobs and $675,000 in economic benefits. There will also be new significant power generation added to the grid each year, accumulating in approximately 174 megawatts of rooftop and community solar deployed across 2,700 homes, generating approximately 300 gigawatts of new energy annually. And there's some additional programs out there that could have also grid impacts on there. The SEP funds are sometimes used for clean energy projects. Also, the ARA funds that are left over from the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act are put towards additional power generation projects. We have some state energy program monies from the bipartisan infrastructure law slated for various energy programs, which include transmission and hydrogen projects. We have additional grants that will train the workforce needed and help with energy upgrades to the buildings. Our step will assist localities in planning for large-scale projects that could help energy resources coming into the grid. And the RACER grant, the last one, will support planning for solar and solar plus storage in underserved communities, which will act as backups during extreme weather outages. So that gives us a little bit of an overview of what's going on. Obviously, as we get these fundings, updates will come into our website and on social media. And I think, as you've noticed, when Governor Youngkin said it's going to be an all-of-the-above energy plan, he really means an all-of-the-above energy plan. We've competed for every energy dollar out there with the support of the administration. I think we've been quite successful, and we look forward to bringing additional monies to the Commonwealth as well to grow and enhance our grid. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thanks, Director Davis. I have a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
So, first of all, I got an email from a constituent literally 2 days ago, upset that he had just got a heat pump and he hadn't been able to apply for a program yet because y'all didn't have a program where he was able to apply, I guess, to administer this federal money that you got. Did you say you're not going to have the application process online for another 14 months?
I believe that's the deadline on the application. Carrie, is that the deadline on the?
That's the drop dead date.
Drop date,
So
okay.
we're hoping to file earlier than that.
So,
And, all states are still working through this process.
Okay, but when do you all expect to have something available so that our constituents can apply for access to these things?
Yes, good morning. Thank you for the question. We're aiming for Q4 of 2024.
Okay, so if they call us and complain, we got to tell them they got to wait until the end of 2024 to apply, and they probably won't see. Right, they probably won't see any money till what, 2025 in terms of a rebate.
Yes, it is to be determined based on the review process from U.S. Department of Energy, but we're hoping to have money flowing in Q4 of 2024.
Money flowing in 24. Okay, are you going to have a process so they can apply before then and be in a queue, or no?
No, the applications wouldn't open until that point.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks. Another question I had for Director Davis, I guess. I heard, we just heard that long federal presentation about how there's, it sounds like, at least $500 billion out there of leverageable money, maybe more. Most of the numbers I saw in here were kind of in the low millions. It seems to me Virginia's share of that billions of federal is probably 30, 40, 50 billion, something like that, given how big we are. Can you, and I'm not sure whether this is your bailiwick or not in the Department of Energy, or whether there's other parts of the administration that are focusing on accessing all that money we just saw. Where is that being done in the Youngkin administration in terms of tapping all those federal opportunities we just saw?
Oh, so we have a team that's actually working to do that. We have numerous conversations with the Department of Energy. We have a consulting team that we've brought aboard that their prior experience was inside the Department of Energy on how we leverage not just the grant funds out there, but also leverage funds from the loan office and what we can do with those funds. We've talked to a number of private entities that have been looking at leveraging the LPO grant fund dollars, and we will be in support of applications made to bring infrastructure to Virginia, leveraging those dollars, as well as to see whether Virginia can draw some down themselves to help additionally grow some of the infrastructure in the Commonwealth.
So did I hear you say that your office is managing our collective effort to access all that, or did you say
Yes, sir.
there's some team in the administration?
No,
that you're part
it's
of?
inside my office. Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you be more specific about what the plan is to try to make sure all of our Virginia businesses know about this? And I mean, do you have the resources you need? I mean, there's a lot of money out there, and
So that's a challenge, actually, Mr. Chairman. As I mentioned before, we only controlled about $75 million up until this last year. Now we're over $1 billion. A lot of the money out there with the LPO. Virginia Energy was not really built. As we all know, it used to be the Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy, and there was a reason why energy was last back in those days. There's been a transformation recently in the Department of Energy to transform to be able to be built around this enormous growth in grant dollars available, as well as the other federal programs. So we're still building some of that out, Mr. Chairman. I think you'll see some dollars being, you'll see some stuff inside the budget we're asking for to be able to move some people around to make sure we have the staff necessary to bring that in.
Okay. And can you describe, I think I heard Mr. Hucker say a minute ago he's meeting with some states on a weekly basis to figure out how to leverage these opportunities. Is there how often are you all meeting with DOE? And
we actually brought, I can't remember Julie's last name. We brought her into town, I guess, 3-4 weeks ago. We brought her into town for a meeting as well as for a conference that we were having here around clean energy at the time, but also had her over here. We've had a number of conversations with her, and like I said, also have a consulting entity that's also working with the LPO on how we leverage some additional dollars. So I can't give you how often we talk to them, but it's quite often.
Okay. I don't have any other questions, and I actually have to go run downstairs and present a bill with the Housing Commission really quick, and Senator Saslow is going to take over the gavel here for a second. Anybody else has any questions?
Oh, I'm finished with the presentation, sir, unless there's any other questions. We're good. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for having me this morning. I'm Ed Bain, President of Dominion Energy Virginia. I have the privilege and the honor of serving the majority of the customers within Virginia, 2.6 million customers, and over 10,000 Virginians who help deliver on our mission each and every day. So I'll just first start with, as a vertically regulated utility, a vertically integrated utility, we have generation, transmission, and distribution. We generate power, then transmit power across long distances with large power lines, and then distributing power into individual businesses and homes. It is worth noting that some of our larger customers, whether it's major manufacturers or some of our data centers, are transmission connected, just given the size. We have a mix of generation assets that have been built over many decades, but we've also have some of the largest, most efficient units in the Commonwealth and the broader PJM region that has been built since 2007, since the Re-Regulation Act, which was a main driver of that act.
Let me ask you a question. What percentage of your energy distribution is carbon-free?
I got a slide that I'm going to get to on that.
Okay.
If you give me a couple of slides, if that's okay.
That's not a problem.
All right. And just also, it's to know, electric production and demand, we have to balance that in the Commonwealth, in PJM, across the nation. And so we're beginning to deploy more battery projects that I'll talk about. We have the largest pump storage facility in the world in Bath County that we leverage to help balance as well. But in general, we have to do that each and every day. And as I mentioned, we are part of a multi-state regional transmission organization called PJM. We have the fastest growth within that 13-state footprint, and it stretches from New York to Chicago to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And so we work very closely together to make sure we meet the needs of customers within that region. So as you think about some of the work that's been done in these areas, in 2015, we had 1 megawatt of solar, over 10,000 megawatts of solar in development and operation today. And it takes investment in all of these areas to make sure that we deliver reliable, affordable, and increasingly clean energy that powers our customers every day. We have the second largest solar portfolio today, and virtually all the growth that we have today is in Virginia. And as you know, we have the largest offshore wind project on this side of the Atlantic that remains on time and on budget, and our onshore construction activities have already started. As I mentioned before, we do have a number of battery storage projects. Our dry bridge project that's part of the Virginia Clean Economy Act just went into service last month. We have a number of pilot projects that are in service, and then some new ones that we announced in September that are testing longer duration battery storage as well. And in order to meet those requirements, we need to make sure that we're looking at all types of technologies. And just speaking of being around the clock, we need to make sure we're doing all that we can to keep the lights on. And we're on track this year to have the best transmission reliability ever when we measure in SAIDI, or System Average Interruption Duration Index. And then our overall SAIDI has also improved this year as well. But just like we talk about in safety and many other areas, we can be proud and never satisfied. We have to be relentless in the work that we do around reliability. Customer expectations continue to change, and we want to make sure that we meet those expectations. That's why we're continuing or finishing our deployment of smart meters, continuing our efforts in strategic undergrounding in the most outage-prone lines, and other efforts to improve reliability. We're also continuing our efforts in energy efficiency programs. There are over 40 programs that are enacted today. If you think about the Grid Transformation and Security Act from 2018, it had a goal of $870 million by 2028. With our filing this month, our Phase 12 filing, we'll be at almost $800 million of that $870 million goal. And then one smaller program that you may be interested in, the Income and Age Qualifying Solar Program. We've installed about 140 systems to date and another 170 systems in the pipeline, and we continue with that effort. And as I mentioned before, there are changes in the dynamics of the grid and the expectations of our customers. We continue to serve growing residential communities throughout our service area, and we serve a diverse base of commercial and industrial customers as well, from manufacturers of nuclear aircraft carriers to food manufacturing, food processing manufacturers. And as I mentioned before, we do have the fastest growing demand in the PJM footprint. Some of that's driven by data centers. Some of that's driven by electrification, both from a vehicle perspective, but also we're seeing more growth from a building perspective as well. And as we're doing this, we have to make sure that we meet the challenges of the grid. To make sure that we have a reliable, resilient, and secure grid, we must plan for natural disasters and man-made threats, executing on projects, and dealing with the change in generation mix. And then lastly, just as our utility, we have an obligation to serve, no matter what it is, residential, commercial, industrial, as well as meeting new demands wherever they come from. And speaking of that diverse fleet, we do have a wide range of energy sources. They all have value to the system. They all have different characteristics, but some aren't interchangeable with others. As we know, solar and wind are carbon-free and fuel-free, which supports our effort to make the grid more increasingly clean, and has a valuable attribute that acts as a natural hedge against rising fuel costs. Our offshore wind project will be a large-scale source of carbon-free, fuel-free generation and will provide customers with significant savings in fuel costs. We also need our around-the-clock resources of power generation that are dispatchable, that can run on demand and can operate around the clock. They also provide rotating mass on the system that's needed to operate. It supports the physics of the grid, and those attributes haven't changed. They're fundamental to make sure we have a safe and reliable grid. Nuclear power is one resource that's carbon-free and around the clock. That's why we are working on extension of the life of our current nuclear power stations and looking closely at small modular reactors. Those units have been operating, especially in Surrey, since 1972 and have benefited our customers for more than 50 years, providing reliable service. So you asked about the mix. If you look at the circle on the left, that's our mix for 2022. So that blue sliver is solar. And it just illustrates the diverse mix that we have today. In the middle is our all-time peak and our winter peak that we had in December 24th. And you can see the mix during that day. I want to highlight a couple of things. Number one, you see a big sliver of oil that you don't see in the others. We manage our fleet as a portfolio. And so that was a 4-day weekend, and we chose to buy gas even when some of our units didn't have day-ahead awards. For units that don't have backup for gas, we moved gas, we have firm transportation to those units. For those units that are dual fuel, that can burn gas and oil, we burned oil to make sure that we keep the lights on, and we moved that gas that we bought over the 4-day period to those other units. And so typically when you look at the left, you don't see that oil. On those winter days when pipelines are competing for gas to heat homes as well as to provide to generation, we're able to use that flexibility in those units to make sure we serve customers. And we test those things on a regular basis, so when the bell rings, we know we can answer the bell for our customers. Secondly, you may say, well, Ed, that's the peak, and seems like a pretty large sliver of purchase power. Well, PJM actually had their peak on Friday night before this morning. And so they ran Bath County 3,000 megawatts to meet the PJM peak. We were actually selling when PJM had the peak. The next morning, we were peaking, but the broader region wasn't, and so we were able to import power because they had run Bath County through the night. So I just want to make sure we're clear on what these things mean. On the right is shows our summer peak. We've had I'll make sure I get this right, our last 4 top summer peaks all happened in 2023. 2 in July and 2 in September. So when you look at our summer peaks over time, the top 4 all happened in 2023. And it's just a reminder that the demand is growing, and we're seeing those summer peaks come back into our system. And then finally, as a fully regulated utility, we have to do whatever we need to make sure that we keep the lights on. We have an obligation to serve. That's our job. All right, integrated resource plan. So first to be clear on what the plan is and isn't. The IRP is a snapshot in time, and it's a projection on how we can meet our customers' future energy needs. And it's based on the best available information at the time, forecasts, technologies, among other assumptions. And integrated resource plans change over time. We've seen how they've changed from a forecasting perspective, from a use of technology, et cetera. There's also a number of statutory requirements that have developed over time that drive what we do in an integrated resource plan as well. What it's not is a request or a plan to build any of those resources. That's not granting approval to build any resource in that plan. That comes in another regulatory proceeding. That comes in a CPCN. This integrated resource plan is based on a higher growth in the PJM forecast. It also has a higher growth over that 15-year time period. And we've talked before about the things driving that growth. A lot in data centers, a lot in electrification. And I know that there are skeptics around just what that growth number should be. I will tell you that this is based on the best information we have at the time. It's based on a lot of customer input. And if you want to go back and look at those years in 2022 and 2023, our actual peaks are higher than what those forecasts show. So, again, using the best available information at the time to make sure that we can put forth the best possible plans. Now, if you look here, showing 4 of the 5 plans, it doesn't show Plan A because even though that plan is required by the Commission order, it ignores certain legal and regulatory requirements, so it didn't include it on this slide. All of these plans show investment in new generation and a range of resources. All of these plans assume the technology that exists today and doesn't account for what may be breakthroughs and things that aren't commercially available in the future. And with every integrated resource plan, we assess where new technology is, and you may recall in this one, we did include small modular reactors. We were comfortable enough where they were to put them in the time frame in the mid-2030s. And you can look across all these plans. There is significant investment in solar and storage to meet the energy needs and for our customers, but also policy objectives. It also included the extension, life extension of some units, again, until we see other technology advancements that can help us meet customer demands. And then lastly, I would just say, this is probably a busy slide, but I'll just mention this, and you've heard me say it a couple times. As a fully regulated, vertically integrated utility, we have an obligation to serve, and we have to plan across all those dimensions around generation, transmission, and distribution. It also means that we have to do things like I mentioned earlier, where you may not have a day-ahead award, but you still buy gas because you know load is going to be high over a 4-day period, and we know that we have customers to serve. And so there are differences in the model, and I believe the model in Virginia today works. And then lastly, I know Ms. Pate showed a slide on rates. Along with reliability, affordability is also our charge. And so we've had rates that have been lower than the national average, as well as the rates in deregulated states for some period of time. I think your slide started at 2007. We went back to 2005. And so, again, we're working hard each and every day to make sure that we're providing reliable service and also of keeping affordability in mind for all of our customers. So, again, thanks for the time today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions of Mr. Bain? Rip?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bain, probably everyone in the room has read the IRP, and I appreciate your distinction about what it is and what it is not. Let me just ask you a broad question. Is Dominion Energy planning to meet the requirements of the Clean Economy Act?
Yes, sir.
And does it expect that it can and will do so?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Okay. Ed, thank you so very much.
All right. Thank you.
Next is the report on the American Electric Power's Energy Conservation Program. Mr. Morris.
Yes, good morning, members of the Commission. John Morris with Appalachian Power. Thank you very much for allowing us to be here this morning, and I'm here to present and really summarize our annual conservation report. And you'll see in the first slide, it's just setting forth our statutory reporting requirement, which is what brings us here this morning. And this slide, in essence, outlines, for lack of a better description, a kind of a positioning or a mission statement. APCO remains committed to cost-effective demand-side energy efficiency programs. We've got a few kind of levers as a utility to try to, in essence, kind of limit the amount of power consumed, especially during peak periods. And you'll see listed in that second bullet point, the primary tools are through response tariffs, direct load control programs, time differentiated rates, which offer advantages to a customer based upon their time of usage, and of course, retail energy efficiency programs. I'm going to try to highlight in these slides briefly some of our past and present conservation efforts. And to kind of provide a global perspective, we're talking about over the course of a decade, really, 4 SCC filings, and that would provide a comprehensive snapshot of APCO's conservation efforts. You'll see the first filing in 2014. 5 of the programs granted approval for a period of 3 years to kind of move to the high points, if you will. The big ones are the Home Performance Program. While the program was in effect, 13,000 some customers participated in that audit-based program. You've got an appliance recycling program. 3,400 appliances were recycled, and then a residential efficient products program, 733,000 energy efficient bulbs, and about 3,000 appliances were purchased through that initiative. 2017, moving forward chronographically, another filing, another approval of 6 new programs. Again, in terms of kind of prioritizing the impact, the larger impact programs are the Bring Your Own Thermostat program. If you have a Wi-Fi enabled thermostat, the company can either raise or set, as per the customer's approval, of course, raise or set the setting on the thermostat. At the end of 2021, our last available information on this program, we had 5,588 devices enrolled. A home performance program, you'll see through December of 2021, about 3,000 assessments and rebate applications. And then at the bottom, a residential appliance recycling program. And this has been marketed through a variety of methods, primarily bill inserts. And as a result of that kind of marketing effort, we've been able to recycle 5,000 freezers and refrigerators. Again, a project from a previous filing, and the program ended in December of 2019, but had a large impact. The 2019 filing, and the next slide, is really the big program in the 3 that were approved for demand-side management was the middle one, residential low-income multifamily weatherization program. You'll just see in raw numbers it was an energy efficiency program to educate and provide services to our customers and low-income customers. And through the end of 2022, 1,159 projects had been completed. And then moving on to kind of a more recent set of decisions from the Commission. In 2020, 5 new programs were approved, and in terms of, again, the larger savings that were incurred through the approvals, you've got the first one, the Residential Home Energy Report Program, and about 300,000 customers had been enrolled in this program. It helps them to alter their usage habits through positive reinforcement. A customer compares their energy activity, their bills, with other homes, and the point of it is just to kind of motivate them by comparison to take action and save energy, maybe keep up with their neighbors on making sure that they're doing what they can do for energy efficiency. And it's worked. Again, 300,000 customers are enrolled in that program. Another large impact is the Residential Efficient Products Program. 1,600 really rebate applications for Energy Star rated appliances. And then on the next slide, the two that are also asterisked are the Residential Energy Efficiency Kit Program and the Business Energy Solutions Program. One program obviously for residential, the second one for businesses, but you'll see there that the residential program had 9,200 energy efficiency kits distributed, and for the Business Solutions Program, we're talking about commercial and industrial customers using basically just more efficient lighting, which, again, adds up. And through the end of 2022, 125 projects have been completed with our commercial customers with $10 million in gross kilowatt hours in savings. So between the two on this page, and let me, if I can, cycle back to the prior page with those two that have been asterisked, we're talking about 90% of the total savings in our conservation programs are through those 5 specific programs that were approved by the Commission in 2020. In addition to that, we have pilot programs to comply with legislation that's been passed. We've got a Veteran Energy Voucher Pilot Program. It provides $500 in energy vouchers for deposits, and voucher funds that remain go to future billings, and that is to benefit veterans through the Virginia Wounded Warrior Program. You'll see there $151,000 in grants were given through December of 2022, and then under Senate Bill 966, the program was extended. 966 also extended the second item on the slide, the Energy Education Pilot. That identifies low-income APCO customers, provides mailings directly to them with information regarding the measures, the things they can do to save energy and reduce their electric bills. Again, that pilot was very helpful, very successful to us, contributed to some of the, as you saw earlier, the large amount of participation in our energy efficiency programs from just kind of putting that information out there. And so the pilot, again, was continued under Senate Bill 966 that was passed in 2018. Other ways to achieve savings are from tariff options. You'll see a time of day option. You're really talking about encouraging customers to shift consumption to lower cost and off-peak periods. And electric vehicles. As you know, in 2019, or not so much the, I guess I'm thinking about electric vehicle legislation that's been discussed in the General Assembly over the last couple of sessions, but in 2019, there was an experimental rate schedule, which is, again, proved successful for our service territory, and it allows residential customers who have standard service to separately charge their vehicles at a specific time of day and receive a more favorable rate. And in our recently concluded triennial rate case that was approved, we had asked for that experimental rate schedule to be made permanent, and it was approved by the Commission. So what was once identified as an experimental rate schedule is now a permanent part of our rate schedule for those who have electric vehicles. Also, smart demand. If you have an advanced meter and AMI meter, I believe in our service territory, it's upward of maybe 100%, 95, 96%. The great majority of our customers have a smart meter. You have the opportunity to have options to reduce consumption during peak hours using your smart meter. Demand response tariffs. These are relatively new programs that have yet to be widely used, but they are available. Peak shaving, which basically allows the company to reduce its cost-causing peaks on the system. And if you're a customer who participates, you'll receive a monthly demand credit on your bill. Commercial industrial curtailment, that is just as indicated. You're provided as a customer, commercial customer, the opportunity to voluntarily curtail your usage. You don't have to, but if you participate, you can voluntarily curtail your usage as requested by the company, and then you're compensated as per the provisions of the tariff. We also have a consumer education program, what, why, and how, which is, I guess, a clever way to market this. It seems to work. We've got 290-some thousand customers, and we've sent emails to them and bill inserts, and we've really and used community leaders and our employees, citizens. We've reached out to those communities and our customers on what we're doing to meet the demand for electricity and what changes are involved in electric rates and how you can save money on your electric bills. Again, these outreach efforts, I guess in a holistic way, tend to drive what we think are solid and always improving levels of participation in our energy efficiency programs. And then another avenue for conservation, and this, of course, was specifically mentioned in the reporting statute, was what are your internal operations? What are your improved efficiencies for your internal operations? So this slide kind of highlights some of those efforts. You'll see cost-effective lighting, Energy Star rated white roofs, management controls, older, inefficient HVAC equipment being replaced, basic kind of like blocking and tackling for energy efficiency, but they have, immediate large impacts. Over the baseline year of 2007, you'll see in that third item, we're talking about an approximate 48% reduction in our operations in terms of energy usage. We also have Volt-VAR optimization. It's a new program started last year. This is more an engineering initiative. It employs smart devices along a distribution circuit, basically just to narrow the bandwidth of voltage that's delivered to customers. Frankly, I asked a little bit about, if you're limiting the voltage swings from 125 volts to 115 volts, that wide swing, and maintain a voltage of closer to 118 volts, so what? And I was told from the engineers, who I am not an engineer, that motors just operate more efficiently, and they're typically built to operate at 115 volts. And just the wide swing makes them less efficient, causes them to wear out faster. It's just an engineering issue when you deliver voltage to an engine, a motor that's properly built for the voltage that it's receiving. And so just managing the bandwidth of voltage, as you can see there in the last bullet point, customers, without doing anything, because we're doing it internally, are saving an estimated 3% on their energy usage. So that's an internal operation, but it's resulting in efficiencies. Lastly, I will direct the Commission to our website, takechargevirginia.com. It has all the things I've talked about just now, just kind of rebate offers on energy-saving appliances, smart devices, more information on our energy efficiency programs, enrollment programs for our customers, both business and residential customers, information on Energy Star appliances, and for those so inclined to test their knowledge, there is an energy quiz on how to be more efficient. I'm not going to tell you what my score was, but it's helpful to kind of get information on our energy efficiency efforts and kind of see what you can do or what our customers can do to help in the effort. So that's our summation of our conservation efforts. I appreciate it, and hopefully be able to answer any questions or get some of our folks to do so.
Are there questions of Mr. Amaris?
Thank you
very much. Okay. Next is Ms. Brittany West, okay, State Government Affairs Manager, American, AES.
All right. Are we ready to learn about the realities of renewable energy development? All right, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission, Brittany West with AES Clean Energy. I'm the Senior Manager leading the Government Affairs team for the East Coast at AES. I want to thank you all. Where's our PowerPoint, first off? There we go. Perfect. I want to thank you all for allowing me to present today and to bring attention to some of the issues that we are facing here in Virginia as it relates to the siting of renewable energy projects, particularly utility-scale solar. I do want to mention many of these problems could be applicable to most energy generation sources. That is one of our projects. That's in North Carolina. I picked that picture because I like the donkey. Didn't know that they are guard animals, so it's a learning opportunity for all of us. Next slide. AES in Virginia. So who are we? AES is a Fortune 500 global energy company headquartered in Arlington, Virginia. I work for the Clean Energy Business Unit. Within Virginia, we are an independent power provider that builds, owns, and operates renewable energy projects. We do participate in Virginia's limited retail market. We are known for providing the first of its kind 24/7 renewable energy product to our big tech partners. And we also have PPAs with our major investor-owned utility. AES developed and operates the largest solar facility east of the Rockies, and that is in Virginia, and that is the Spotsylvania Energy Center. You can see our presence in the Commonwealth and nationally. Before I dive into this, you can see we have about 2,488 megawatts under development. I think it's really important that we do not conflate development with what is actually going to be operational. And you're going to hear a lot about that coming up. So before I get into the siting-specific challenges to Virginia, I wanted to provide a basic overview of how developers approach siting and building these projects. There's been a lot of misinformation going around about where we can build these projects and how we build them. My hope is that this will give you a foundational knowledge of how a renewable energy project is developed. You will quickly see that to get a renewable energy project developed in Virginia, you successfully have to navigate a matrix of binary risks. So what do I mean by that? It is incredibly difficult to site a renewable energy project in Virginia. There is a very low probability that projects will become operational, and it's getting increasingly tougher in the Commonwealth to get projects approved at the local level. Per PJM's most recent report on the energy transition, you can expect only 5% of projects within PJM to become operational, and that is for the whole RTO. So first, how do you find a site? Well, you got to identify a site near transmission. Despite what you may hear, you cannot site a solar project anywhere, and no, we are not going to take up all the agricultural land in Virginia because we are physically constrained as to where we can site. At a minimum, we need to be close to a transmission line, and we need to find a point where there is existing capacity on the line to absorb new generation. Next, we have to secure land and file with PJM. After we identify a potential site, we will try to secure the land. This could be done with one or multiple landowners. You can lease the property, buy the property. And then you'll file with PJM, where they'll conduct their studies to determine if we can interconnect and if there are any system upgrade costs associated with the project. A developer does pay for the system upgrade costs. They can range from $0 to hundreds of millions of dollars. This cost is going to dictate if a private developer is able to move forward with the project. PJM has noted that the cost to interconnect and required system upgrades have increased since 2019, so those costs are generally rising. So after those initial results come back, we have our landowners. We can then we then can move forward with our state and local permits. These studies and permits include, this is non-exhaustive list, but to give you an idea, environmental studies, wetland delineations, threatened and endangered species, cultural and historical, and then engineering studies such as geotech, hydrology, and site design. Obviously, these permits can extend our development timeline and increase costs depending on the mitigation requirements. They can also cause substantial project redesigns, resulting in delays as well with a lower energy output. So a general rule of thumb in Virginia, take however big your parcel of land is, you can only develop about half of it due to the wetlands, your setbacks, retention ponds, etc. So at this point in the development process, a developer is roughly 3 years into de-risking the project, and they probably spend a couple millions of dollars. Again, no guarantee that you're going to get a permit at the local level. This number, the millions that we're doing in our due diligence, it's not including your CapEx, it's not going to include your financial agreement, and it's not going to include your system upgrades. So we have to complete most of these studies and get a variety of permits before we can approach the local board of supervisors for our conditional use permit or SUP, and before we can file for the state for the required CPCN or PBR certificate. So if all your stars align and you get all these permits and everything's approved, then you can begin construction. For a 100 megawatt project, you could take about 1.5 to 2 years, but you can experience delays due to supply chain issues, or if you're finally on site and you start constructing and you realize there's some problems there. So I know I spent quite a few minutes on the development, but I really wanted you all to understand the multitude of variables that we're dealing with when it comes to siting. There's not a lot of predictability in the world of renewable energy development, and despite the significant capital investments we have to make in these projects to de-risk, there is no guarantee that these projects will come online. So local approval. So I wanted to touch on what we're doing at the local level to try to get these projects approved. So while we're working on these studies and permits, we're doing this all congruently with the county. We are working with the county to address their local concerns. That could be required setbacks, could be vegetative screening, construction times, our decommissioning plans, as well as our recycling plans for after decommissioning. Also, this is where we're going to be required to do our state mandated public notice requirements, as well as any additional requirements requested by the county. And then it's going to come to the financial agreement with the county. The Commonwealth has passed incentives over the past few years to encourage counties to approve renewable energy projects. These incentives include a revenue share agreement, a M&T property step-back approach, and then you can also contribute additional funds as well. So depending on the size of these projects, these financial agreements can range in the tens of millions for the life of the project. However, despite these various financial incentives that the state has put in place, it is becoming increasingly difficult to get permits at the local level. This is not something unique to Virginia. It is happening all over PJM and the country. Over the past few years, local opposition has become more and more organized and is driven by a myriad of factors. Why is there opposition? Well, local opposition to renewables is, like I said, driven by a wide range of factors. We could spend hours debating the merits of each argument, so I'm just going to list them here. First, lack of information about renewable energy projects or active misinformation campaigns. Aesthetic concerns for the landscape. We're hearing a lot about preservation of rural character. Impacts to the agricultural community. I do want to mention we have sheep on our sites. We have pollinators. There is a bee crisis in this country, and the industry is looking at crops, but we are energy infrastructure developers. Party affiliation. I do want to mention this. You cannot just send an electron to your off-taker. It goes into the grid. So it's a jumble. And generally, electrons follow the path of least resistance. So you could argue the closer you are to the type of generation source, higher probability you're going to get those electrons. And then balance between the rights of property owners and abutters and a personal conflict. Lack of redress from the fossil fuel industry. I wouldn't say that's too much in Virginia, but in some states like Pennsylvania, that's a problem. And then land use changes impacts. So where are we in Virginia? As a result, we did some research, and over half of Virginia's 95 counties have either passed or are contemplating restrictive ordinances or solar bans. A restrictive ordinance is an acreage cap. So what I mean by the acreage cap, they'll just say X number of acres can be developed for renewable energy. Sometimes they're very small. As I mentioned, a lot of de-risking and a lot of money is going into this, so we won't even enter the county. And we can't just build anywhere, so if these counties have the transmission, that's a problem. In conjunction, we now have, as a result of House Bill 206, they just finished the regulatory approval process. Future projects are going to be required to undergo mitigation requirements if you build on prime ag land or forested land. It's probably going to be a substantial number of projects. That's creating another new barrier to entry. So pulling from PJM's Energy Transition and Resource Retirements Replacements report, they do know that retirements are at risk of outpacing the construction of new resources. A lot of that is due to industry forces, but siting is one of the main drivers. And I'm just going to reiterate again, only 5% of projects that file with PJM become operational. So I'm not making any recommendations here. I'm just sharing what other states have done. This problem, again, not unique to Virginia. Other states are trying to address siting reform as they transition to their grids. So what Michigan just adopted legislation that's going to allow developers to pursue permits at the PSC, so equivalent to RSC, SCC, instead of at the local level for projects over a certain size. And to obtain PSC approval, the project must meet requirements adopted by the state. Illinois created a set of zoning standards that localities must use for renewable energy projects over a certain size. Localities may enact looser standards if they so choose. Ohio essentially created an offshore Ohio siting board for projects over a certain size. However, they just gave localities veto power, and that has led to a steep decline in project approvals. And then finally, New York created the State Office of Renewable Energy, which has the authority to approve permits for projects over a certain size with primacy over localities. Obviously, there's more details to each one of these, and I did not include every state that is addressing siting, but I just wanted to provide you an overview. So with that, any questions?
I was just curious about the length of the interconnection study queue in PJM and what the typical life cycle of the study period is for projects entering the queue.
Yeah, so they did PJM did undergo queue reform. Has it changed the? So this is Ben Saunders. He's our Senior Director of Development for PJM.
Yeah, so with the current queue reform, it should shrink it down to about 3 years or so from application to signing the ISA. But previous, it's really drug out over the last few years where it's been 5+ years.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Meade? Mr. Browder?
Ms. West, is the all-in cost of developing a solar project, has that been increasing or decreasing over the last few years, including the actual solar
Everything has
rate?
been increasing. Supply chain costs are going up, labor is going up. I think in general the costs for the development of renewable energy projects have gone up. Do you disagree? No.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Rasnick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does that change your economics in deciding where or how many projects to pursue with the cost going up?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, everything. I would say, as you further de-risk a project, right? So you do your initial financial modeling, but as you say, engage with EPC or engineering, constructing your procurement. You get your panels, which at the federal level that has been some issues. Well, you tend to find the further you de-risk a project, and then if you have to undergo certain mitigation requirements, they tend to raise the cost of a project. So I would just say the further along you de-risk, yep, it's you're normally going to see a higher cost.
Yeah, and obviously increasing the cost for our customers as well.
Right.
Any other questions? Nope. Okay. Doug Weber.
You mentioned House Bill 206, and obviously farmland and our forestry is obviously very important to the Commonwealth of Virginia, but also so is the Chesapeake Bay.
Mm-hmm.
If we are to develop all of the necessary land that we need in order to reach the clean energy goals that Virginia has established, what kind of increases in runoff are we talking about when it comes to the Chesapeake Bay?
Yeah, this is a good question. So my understanding of the leading cause of pollution in the Chesapeake Bay is nitrogen. And 45% of that comes from the agricultural industry. And if I understand correctly, the mitigation requirements in Virginia are voluntary for the ag industry. Is that correct? Or is it mandatory when it comes to? So my question being, I think we have mandatory mitigation requirements, right? So I can't tell you the correct answer. I can't tell you the answer right now.
No.
I guess my question is this, I guess it's what Rick might know the answer, because we talked about it one day, was the percentage of land in the Commonwealth that needs to be under solar in order to reach our clean energy goals. If you count runoff, as in like housing developments, et cetera, that's a pretty big, that's also a pretty big reason as to why we have the runoff issues that we do, and we're going to drastically increase, because as far as I am concerned, a solar panel is considered an impervious surface, so you're going to have some runoff issues there. So just as we have with a housing development, or where you have impervious surfaces, you would also have some of those issues when it comes to solar development.
Right.
And if we increase that percentage of land, there's going to be some runoff issues, and the Chesapeake Bay is a very valuable commodity for us in the Commonwealth, and agriculture in general has spent millions of dollars to mitigate that, and in fact our oyster population is growing now.
So the debate over whether solar panels are pervious or impervious, I think that's still going on at the DEQ. I will mention underneath the panels is all a pervious surface. And normally what happens, so you are going to agree with the county what type of vegetative landscape you're going to have underneath those panels. And then what will happen over the life cycle of a project is nature comes in, right? So whatever's around that area, animals are going to come in, pollinators are going to come in, so you're going to have the same type of vegetation that you would just have naturally next to it. So I think there's been our studies will say this is not an impervious surface. It's a pervious surface because you have grass cover. So I can't give you specifics, but I can tell you that.
Mr. West, isn't there a DEQ like work group or something working on this issue right now to determine whether
I
it
think
is?
they're, from my understanding, they're working with the universities on it.
Right. Okay. Doug Weber, you have another question? No. Okay. Any other questions? I don't have any because I missed your whole presentation. I'm sorry.
I'm really upset about it.
I thought that was going to take 15 minutes. It turned into 50. Okay. No other questions? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Demosny. Appreciate that.
Thanks.
So next and almost last on our agenda, we have the status on our executive hiring situation. Tom, you want to tell us sort of where things stand on that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick update from our director, DLS director, Amigo Wade. He couldn't be here this morning because of a conflict, but the job advertisement for executive director was posted on October 10th, and it closed November 27th. An online screening was included. We received a total of 5 responses. I believe only 1 response was complete, but we did get resumes from 5 individuals. They've been sent to the hiring committee. Just a reminder, at the last meeting, y'all set a hiring committee of Senator Searle, Senator Obenshain, Delegate Kilgore, and Cassidy Rasnick. When y'all are ready to review the applications and schedule interviews, please reach out to Claire at DLS, or we can reopen the job position if you don't want to go forward with any interviews.
And for anybody who thinks the fix was in, I don't recognize any of the names. So we're going to have some new people in Virginia Energy Policy if this is the group we picked from. And I think right now the plan is for our smaller committee to vet those resumes and hopefully hire somebody. And then I think we have money for, I want to think, 2 more people after that. right now, and we're hoping the governor includes some more money in his budget for a full staff of 7, which is what we're authorized for. So, does anybody have any questions about that? No questions. Okay, great. So now we'll move on to public comment. Does any member of the public have comment? If we can limit this to 3 minutes, if anybody has anything to say. Nobody out there? If all of you wants to say anything? Oh, one. Okay. Hi, welcome.
Good afternoon. I'll be brief. Chair Saravel and honorable members, I appreciate you letting me speak today. My name is Alden Cleanthus. I'm the president and co-founder of Norfolk Solar. We're one of the only low-income focused solar companies in the entire state. Our business is so modeled that we worked with the Trump administration when we stood up in 2019, and we've worked with the Biden administration. I'm here today to speak to you on behalf of myself and the Virginia Distributed Solar Alliance, a 10-year-old member group that includes solar developers, environmental and consumer rights advocates, and customers of rooftop solar power across the state. I wanted to make you aware of the ongoing battle for solar energy in Virginia. In a recent SCC work group meeting, the consensus was that Virginia will never meet the mandates of the Clean Economy Act because interconnection has become simply too expensive. Dominion put new interconnection requirements in place in December of 2022 that have made solar impossibly expensive for schools, hospitals, small businesses, and others. For an example, we had an Alliance member put solar on a school a few years ago, and it cost him $100 to interconnect. He just got an estimate to interconnect another school for $325,000. In the years prior to the new interconnection rules, Norfolk Solar deployed millions of dollars of investment-based equitable solar. Since the parameters went into place 12 months ago, we've deployed $0. As a state, we can have all the laws and mandates that we want. We can dream of diversifying our energy resources, but if the folks like me on the ground can't do our job and can't run our businesses to actually make that happen, then your efforts won't matter. I hope you connect with us to learn more. Thank you. Alden, A-L-D-E-N, Alden. Last name is Cleanthus. It's Greek. It's spelled clean like you clean your house, and then T-H-E-S. We got an injunction over this. We got an injunction over the summer, which we thought gave us some light, and then they got interim parameters put back in place in November. There's a work group that's studying interconnection. They expect a report sometime in January, but what we were told at the last meeting, which was just Monday, is that once they get that report in January, they have no idea what the next steps are. And as a business, I have not been able to operate in a year. So that's not good enough. Thank you.
Anybody else have any public comment? Great. Well, I appreciate everybody coming out today for our first sensitive CUR meeting in, what, Senator Zaslow, 7 years? The meeting's adjourned.
Better late than never.